Here now, Mike Huckabee, former governor of the state of Arkansas, Fox News contributor, and host of Huckabee on Saturday and Sunday nights on TBN. Governor, thanks for being here tonight. And I know this is an issue and now a story that is very near and dear to your heart and something you're very passionate about. Did you agree with this move by the president?
I really did, Sandra, and I appreciate Kim Kardashian West for using her celebrity for something that does good. Look, I understand a lot of people want to lock folks up and keep them there forever, but 22 years for a first-time nonviolent offender? There are a lot of people across America who have murdered people who will never serve even a third of that amount of time. My prison director in Arkansas, Larry Norris, used to say, we lock a lot of people up that we're mad at rather than the ones we're afraid of. And the fact is, at over $33,000 per year per inmate average, and that sometimes can be as much as $75,000, $80,000 a year, it's not working. It's not really helping us resolve a crime problem. And the truth is, Sandra, we don't have a crime problem as much as we have a drug and alcohol problem. A lot of the people that we're incarcerating, we need to be putting them in treatment centers. So I applaud the president because this took a lot of guts for him to do this. There's never, ever a political upside to granting any type of clemency, be it a commutation or a pardon.
It's really fascinating, and it's really capturing the attention of the nation, especially because we've sort of seen the president looks like he's been going on this high-profile clemency spree. I mean, you looked at the pardons, and then he's talking about more pardons, and then commuting Alice Johnson. And what is the goal, do you think, of the president here? What is he looking to achieve in the big picture?
Well, I think two things. One, he's looking at each case individually, which is frankly what the executive branch should do. They should never just say blanket, I'll never issue a commutation. Neither should they say we're just going to issue blanket commutations, clemencies, pardons for everybody. I mean, you've got to look at every case individually. But I think he's also using this as a way to point out some of the total failures in our criminal justice system and in the sentencing guidelines. It was real popular a few years ago, Sandra, to do the 3 strikes, you're out. You go say that at a Rotary meeting, and you get a lot of applause. But it was one of the dumbest public policy moves we ever made in this country, and it has cost not only an enormous level of money, but it's really ruined the lives of a lot of people who had no business being in prison for life for, let's say, 3 $400 thefts. I mean, it's disproportionate to the crime committed.
Well, you know, Governor, I want to get this in here as we continue to learn more about just who Alice Marie Johnson is. 63 years old, and we are being told right now that she is officially and has been released from that federal prison. She was serving a life sentence. I mean, it's a remarkable story. Without possibility of parole, the Aliceville Correctional Institution in the state of Alabama, mother of 5, grandmother of 6, and a great-grandmother of 1. And she has now walked out of that federal prison, Governor.
And I'm glad she has. Again, think about this. Life without parole. That's the kind of sentence you give to people who have committed mass murder. It's the kind of sentence that you give to people who have created a savage cop killing. But for a nonviolent first-time drug trafficking charge, I'm not saying it's not serious to traffic drugs, but I am saying that the best way to deal with a drug problem is not just to lock people up and throw away the key and spend the taxpayers' money. It may be to put those people in treatment programs and then to recognize that there's no long-term advantage to just locking people up and making sure that they're caged for the rest of their lives.
But at the same time, this is an administration, and I'm sorry to cut you off there, Governor, but at the same time, I mean, this is an administration, to be clear, that is shown to be very tough on crime. And I say that as we now know that Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, met several times with Ms. Kardashian leading up to this, in the months leading up to now her release from that federal prison.
Well, and I think to your point, there are some things for which people should be locked up for life. There are some crimes that are just heinous. You know, I believe in the death penalty. I had to carry it out more than any other governor in my state's history. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't like it. But there were some crimes for which that was an appropriate adjudication. But my heavens, you can't go around and just put everyone up in a lockup And then what you do is you've got to realize that when a person comes out as a felon, they can't even get a job emptying a bedpan in a nursing home, because we've created background checks that say if you have a conviction, there are most jobs you will never be able to do. Now, how does that help us in the long term? Truth is, Sandra, it doesn't.
Fascinating stuff, and I'm sure we'll eventually learn more about this woman as she's been released. And those pictures in the Oval Office of Kim Kardashian West standing there with the president, those will live on forever. We'll keep following this. Governor, thanks for being here tonight.
Always a pleasure, Sandra. Thank you.